Newsfirst, Newsline.
Hello there, very good evening. Welcome to another edition of Newsline Live, coming to you live and direct, of course, from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. Our guest this evening, of course, he's recently received an appointment as a working committee member of the Samagi Jana Balavegya. He is a senior lecturer of communication studies at the Open University, Dr. Mahim Mendis. So very good evening, Doctor, and welcome to the show.
Hello.
Doctor, first, congratulations, of course, on your appointment as a member of the working committee of the Samagi Jana Balavegya. The Samagi Jana Balavegya is, of course, the main opposition in Parliament. Currently, the biggest national issue that we're kind of grappling with at the time, besides, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, is the ownership of the East Container Terminal. Now, many dub the East Container Terminal as a strategic location, and rightly so. They also point towards the historical importance of these ports in Sri Lanka and how foreign entities had used these ports to make inroads into Sri Lanka, and casting doubt on what would happen if the container terminal is given to a foreign nation. There was also questions raised regarding the stance of the Samagi Jana Balavegya with regard to this matter, following an article that was published saying that the Samagi Jana Balavegya is still on the fence. Are you still on the fence?
Very, very clearly, the SJB has been very consistent with regard to what they believe in. That is, we have very clearly stated that what matters in international agreements, bilateral agreements, is, I have already stated, we believe in the national interest of the country, and we will not be committing, we will not be sabotaging another regime with regard to how they should be signing agreements, because we have very clearly advocated what matters is the interests of the country and the people.
Well, the President, recently speaking, said that part of the reason why the government of Sri Lanka is even still in discussion regarding this East Container Terminal were the sins of the past, of the previous regime. It was the previous regime that signed the Memorandum of Cooperation with Japan and India. And when it comes to international matters, you cannot just say, well, they did it, so we're not doing it. It's not the government or the United National Party government or the government of good governance that entered into an agreement, a memorandum of cooperation with India and Japan. It was the government of Sri Lanka. And because of that, we are bound to a certain extent to abide by that agreement.
So, if they were in agreement with the policies of the Yahapal and the government on this matter, why did they oppose it at that time? We are asking this government very specifically, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the president, not to be inconsistent, not to play the fool with the public mandate that they received. Do not say one thing in the morning and another thing in the evening. They have to be disciplined. As a president, he should be consistent in what he articulates. He cannot be saying sins of the past. Well, is he a person without a backbone? Is he not, didn't he understand what he was opposing at that time? You cannot be a president supporting one day, opposing another time. They very clearly opposed it, and now they are saying what the government, the previous government has done. Well, they call it a sin of the past, a sin. Well, this is all, you see, this is not certainly wording, language in communication meant for a president who has received the type of mandate he has received.
Dr. Mendis, if I question you as to what the Samagi Jana Balavegya is doing about this situation and making sure that the actions of the government are truly in the best interest of the general public, what is the Samagi Jana Balavegya doing with regard especially to the East Container Terminal issue?
You see, now, as I said, the Samagi Jana Balavegya, which was coming out of basically the womb of the UNP, right, they had a very consistent policy, right? So they articulated that policy at that time. Mr. Sajith Premadasa was not in disagreement with what the government stated at that time. You're talking about the joint, you see, being a joint program between India and Japan, right? So we had a very consistent policy at that time. Now, we are only asking this regime to be true to your own words. You opposed what we advocated. If you oppose what we advocated, right, why do you now talk a different language?
So the Samagya Jana Balavega is of the stance that they need to deliver on their promises.
Absolutely. As a responsible opposition, we have to ensure that this government is true to its own words. That is the fundamental obligation that we have. We have stated our policies, and we want to ensure, provide the checks and balances. We want to ensure that this government is true to the people who mandated them in an unprecedented manner. Do not tell lies to the people. That is what we tell the president and the government.
Dr. Mendis, of course, in the midst of all of these internal issues that we're currently facing internationally, there is the report of the Human Rights Commissioner. The High Commissioner for Human Rights is out. It has been sent to Sri Lanka. We have sent a reply. In that report, it's quite a damning report about Sri Lanka and how we have addressed the human rights violations that are alleged to have taken place in Sri Lanka. How do you see Sri Lanka tackling with this issue, especially since the High Commissioner for Human Rights has recommended that member states impose targeted sanctions against those who have credible allegations of human rights violations against them here in Sri Lanka?
Making a mockery of the rule of law is something that is unpardonable. This government, then and now, the previous Mahinda Rajapaksa regime, in which the Defense Secretary was Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, now in office as president, they have consistently made the rule of law a mockery. The type of killings that they were responsible for, whether it be Valikada prison murders, whether it be Ratu Paswala murders, whether it be Katunayaka EPF related murders, whether it be Halavata murders, whatever, and now the Mahara murders. These people habitually made rule of law a mockery. This government has jeopardized the people, the future of the country and the people finally have to answer for all these terrible policy blunders of this government. Rule of law is so important for national development. Rule of law is not a matter that the United Nations should be raising with the government. We should know, and our people also should know, how to make sure that this government respects the rule of law. Have we got to, is it an exaggeration if the international community is telling the government that this is not the way to do things? This government is doing things in a manner that jeopardizes the future of unborn generations as well, and making it very clearly a failed state, a failed state. Foreigners have to remind the people of this country and the government that we need to honor the law.
Dr. Mendis, you believe that the rule of law is not being honored here in Sri Lanka?
In what way is the rule of law honored in Sri Lanka? All these, you see, if you take the Valikada prison murders, isn't it a joke?
This was the 2012 incident.
Of course. You see, we are now talking about Mahara. You see, why should we? We are talking about Mahara, you see, investigations, and maybe they will have another 1,000-page report, just like the Valikada prison murder.
The court case for the 2012 murders at the Valikada prison is, of course, still ongoing. The case is ongoing.
You mean the Valikada?
Yes.
The Valikada, you see, whatever the report was out, right? Well, we are only asking the government to ensure that it's not only Valikada, you see mentioned Valikada prison murders, but with all those, you see, murders that took place with Ratu Paswala, taking the law into your hand and acting with impunity is what this government is responsible. This government cannot, you see, I can remember how the president, you see, was accusing General Sarath Fonseca, the current chairman of the Samagya Jana Balavega, how he was telling the BBC that if he gives evidence in an international tribunal, well, they will not hesitate to even, hang him. That is what the president, at that time, the defense secretary told the BBC. Any person can look at that program even now, the BBC Hard Talk program. Well, it's very, very dangerous. Right? This is not the way to do things. We have been undermined. The people have been undermined. The international community is losing respect. And we are being labeled as a failed state because of their inability to ensure justice for even the families that who are victimized. Take Ekneligoda murder. Mrs. Ekneligoda is going all over the place, pleading for justice from the people of this country, the international community, falling on deaf ears. Lasantha Wickrematunge murder. Are they going to investigate into murders? I, as a working committee member of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, we are firmly for rule of law, and we are asking this government when they will prosecute those fellows who were responsible for those murders.
Well, while reminding our viewers, of course, that you can send in your questions to the number that will be displayed on your screen, we'll get into a question that has already come in. Dr. Mendis, this was regarding the topic that we discussed at the beginning, where you said that you believe this government should abide by the promises it made for the general public. The question from our viewer is, do you, Doctor, say that the 49% should be given to the private investor from India, or should it not? Direct answer.
See, it is not a matter for a person like me to come into the show and tell it should be given. What will be our policy? As I stated very clearly, this is playing, this is a matter connected with the interests of the people of this country. Properties belonging to the people of this country is connected with the the wealth of the people. It is not it's not something that we should, just offhand, in an ad hoc manner, in an arbitrary manner, comment on. If we were in power, if we got a mandate, we very clearly stated that we would study anything, whether it be MCC or whether this or that, whatever it may be. Positive, we believe in positive alignment with countries who will enter into agreements that will ensure, of course, their interests and our interests, but not at a cost to the national interest of the people of the Republic of Sri Lanka. Very clear on that. SJB will be consistent. Mrs. Sajith Premadasa believes in that, and we have very clearly stated that.
Dr. Mendis, now that the Samagi Jana Balawegaya is pretty much in order with the appointment of the working committee and other senior positions in the Samagi Jana Balawegaya have already been filled, are there discussions with the United National Party for an alliance with the Samagi Jana Balawegaya? What matters most is consistency, compatibility with regard to policies of Samagi Jana Balawegaya. Any party that believes in the social democratic principles, inspired by social democratic principles, well, our full policy statements will be issued very, very soon as to what we have stated our position over and over again. Mr. Premadasa stated his policies at the presidential election, and then as SJB leader at the last general elections, any party, whether it be the United National Party or the patriotic movement, whatever party that operates registered in this country, compatible with our interests, we shall believe in making them members, constituent elements of Samagi Jana Balawegaya. We are not talking about, our leader is not talking about how to capture the United National Party, bring them over, take us over there into Sirikota or something like that.
You see, that's not the issue. Those are things of the past. We are friends with anyone who believes in the policies, stated policies of the Samagi Jana Balavegya. United National Party is welcome to join the Samagi Jana Balavegya.
At any given time?
At any given time, provided they respect the policies of the Samagi Jana Balavegya.
Well, of course, Dr. Mendis, with the COVID-19 vaccines coming into Sri Lanka and hopefully, possibly a change of the current situation, the spread of the virus in the country, there were initially plans on, or at least expressions that were articulated that the provincial council elections should be held as soon as possible. Is the Samagi Jana Balavegya preparing for an upcoming provincial council election?
Samagi Jana Balavegya, the most decisive opposition force in this country, is prepared to face any election. We have already started meeting with the people in every single electorate, and we are prepared and look forward to face the elections. As a democratic party, with a very decisive goal in mind, of course, to capture state power democratically, we have to be ready for all local government elections, provincial elections. We know that how Pohotua captured power many years ago. The local government authorities, well, they have been preparing to capture state power, the presidency, quite a long period ago. Samagi Jana Balavegya had only one month of campaigning in order to get. We did not have even a proper symbol till we found the telephone symbol, and we have been able to make unprecedented, massive impact on the people of this country, irrespective of their ethnicity, irrespective of what, their profile. With a very short campaign, we were able to perform extremely well. Pohotua had been preparing for a long time in order to get the type of mandate that they got. We are ready, and we shall decisively face elections because we are the viable alternative to Mahinda Rajapaksa, Gotabaya Rajapaksa current regime.
Dr. Mendis, with the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, spreading within Parliament, the number of sittings in Parliament have been limited. But of course, one thing that cannot be forgotten is that a member from your party, who is a representative in Parliament, is at risk of losing his parliamentary seat. Parliamentarian Ranjan Ramanayake, after he was found in contempt of court, and he was imprisoned for it for 4 years. What are the developments in this regard? What is the Samagi Jana Balavegya doing to, of course?
We are not talking about the type of verdict given by the Supreme Court of this country. The Supreme Court is the Supreme Court of the Republic of Sri Lanka. But whether it be the judiciary, whether it be the executive, whether it be the legislature, one thing is very important. All these people should remember that democracy is supreme. Everything should be subordinated to democracy. This is not the way things should be dealt with in a true democracy. Ranjan Ramanayake MP is someone who was outspoken consistently. He spoke out what he had to say. The Supreme Court has given the verdict. We know how other judiciaries behave. We know how India behaves with regard to issues of this nature. We do not want parliamentarians threatened, physically intimidated, threatened by the executive, then you humiliated, intimidated by some other powers. Well, we do not expect that to happen because that is dangerous. It has happened to Ranjan Ramanayake now. It may happen to some other parliamentarian. Well, I think Mr. Ranjan Ramanayake, who is also a university student in the Open University of Sri Lanka. A lot of people don't know that he's a university student. He is a first-year undergraduate. For the past 3 years, he had been with the Department of Social Studies of the Open University of Sri Lanka, where I am a lecturer. Well, He is paying for what? Our inability in bringing legislation that will ensure that harsh treatment will not be meted out to people who express their views fearlessly and courageously on behalf of the people. Ranjan is a victim of the incapacity of so-called democratic regimes to democratize Sri Lankan society.
So moving forward, of course, on the freedom of speech aspect, you are a senior lecturer in that department. How do you see Sri Lanka's status as far as the freedom of speech or the right of a person to express themselves freely in Sri Lanka goes? Has it developed? Could it develop more?
Freedom of expression is most sacred. A country where freedom of expression is curtailed, is threatened, is not a country that can be taken seriously by citizenry, and the international community will have utter contempt for a country like that. Now, this government should understand that they should believe in whatever progress that the previous government, I think Mr. Wickramasinghe's regime, believed very firmly. This is long before the Yahapalana government. They ensured, well, I should say something very good about Mr. Wickramasinghe's policy at the time. He believed in self-regulation of the media and not government regulation of the media on behalf of the state. We introduced, I think Mr. Wickramasinghe's administration at the time introduced the Press Complaints Commission of Sri Lanka. The Press Council of Sri Lanka was a body, government-controlled, government-dominated body, which was not in the interest of democracy. 1973 Act number 5, the Press Council Act, was not in the interest of a democracy. I think Professor G.L. Pires, before he entered politics, he has articulated this very well. Well, it is not in the interest, that type of draconian press council is not in the interest of democracy. That is why we had the Press Complaints Commission. With regard to electronic media, with regard to social media, with regard to all types of media and freedom of expression in general, what matters is the citizens as well as the journalists should believe in self-regulation. People who do not believe in self-regulation will jeopardize freedoms, fundamental freedoms. But we must tell very clearly, the press is expected to play the role of the fourth estate. It is expected to play the watchdog function over all the institutions of the state. We are asking this government not to play the fool with press freedom. We know that all types of committees are working in bringing draconian legislation once again to curtail media freedom. We tell them that we will mobilize the people everywhere, nationally, internationally, against such authoritarian measures that they have in mind. We shall, as members of the SJB, on behalf of the people of this country, defend press freedom, even if we are to be killed in the streets.
Very strong views from you, Dr. Mendis. Unfortunately, our time is up. It's quite an interesting discussion with you here today on Newsline Live. Thank you very much for taking time off your busy schedule and appearing on our show. And also, a big thank you all out to our viewers out there. Of course, we will see you again, same time, same place tomorrow. Until then, take care and God bless.
Thank you.
Newsfirst, Newsline.